Our next project is a spray paint project, and we're going to be working with portraits in the style of Banksy. Cutting stencils and paper and art has a long history, and you can do either a lot of detail or very tiny cuts, or in our case, we're going to be working with something a bit larger and moving into the medium of spray paint. So for this project, when you're thinking about your portrait, obviously you need to start with an original image or something that is not somebody else's artwork. So you can work from a photo, but you can't work from a drawing, a painting, or a stencil that already exists. The goal here is to create your own stencil and your own background. Banksy, of course, would go and spray paint on walls, but we are going to be working on a hard paper, like this example here. So when you're looking at your ideas, think about backgrounds and foregrounds. Banksy, of course, did spray painting on walls and would work with many stencils to make different pieces. You can do yours all in one stencil, but you need to think about which parts you have to keep and which parts you have to cut out. So for example, in this one, you'll notice that along the shoulder, that there are spaces left, because if it's cut out, the black is the part that is cut out and then spray paint through later. Um, if you cut it as a solid line, it becomes much more delicate and more difficult, especially if you wanted to use the stencil more than once. In terms of what we're spray painting onto, I'm going to have you prepare your background. You can use mixed media in the background and spray paint, but I would like you to try and create using either a pattern, either a symmetrical pattern or an irregular pattern, or rhythm. So there has to be some sort of repetition in the background. And you can do layering as well. You might decide to make even a separate smaller stencil for the background and spray paint some layers of color to create depth, and then have a detailed stencil that goes on top of it. You can use more than one stencil. So in this project, the student has different stencil for the blue, and then the white, and then the black on top, which is an option, but it's more complicated than you need to go. This one, the comic book and the blue is all in the background, and then the stencil is actually spray painted twice. So it's the same stencil, and it's done first with a layer of green spray paint, and then once that is dry, the stencil is placed back, but slightly off from the original spot that it was spray painted, and spray painted again in black. Here is another example where there is some layering and some pattern in the background, and then on top, some green, and then another spray again of black. You might also notice that there is a bit of like physical texture in it as well that you could play around with. So your first step on this project is to try and find a photo of a person or an animal, or if you have some other idea, you can see me about it. And then we will work from there to plan your background and start drawing and cutting out your stencil.